I'm Susan Liss, and I'm the director of the Democracy Program at the Brennan Center. And our campaign finance work falls under our side of the aisle called Democracy. And so I'm incredibly thrilled to be working with fantastic colleagues, and I really want to thank all of my colleagues who have put this program together today. My mind is just twirling on the things that we can do, and we've only had one panel and two wonderful kickoff speakers. I'm here to introduce our keynote, and we are delighted and honored that Professor Lawrence Lessig from Stanford Law School has been willing to fly across the country to share his knowledge with us. I know many of you are very familiar with his contributions to this field already. He is currently a professor of law at Stanford Law School and the founder of the school's Center for Internet and Society. And he is one of the foremost intellectuals on intellectual property and intellectual property law and the Internet. And from what I understand, that tremendous knowledge base has segued into a fascination and interest with these very important underlying issues involving campaign finance reform. He will be moving to Harvard to start a study on ethics and to start a center on ethics and institutional corruption in the fall. And we are really very honored and so pleased to welcome him here and thank him for coming. Professor Lessig.
Thank you very much. The advertisement for this conference said that the first keynote would provide some statistics, and I, quote, would provide slides. So here I am to provide the slides. I don't know if you saw this film, Maxed Out. It's a story of credit card debt in the United States. This is an extraordinary problem. Of course, it has many dimensions, but one important source of the problem was a statute called the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act of 2005. A little bit of a typo. There's no consumer protection in that act at all. But the effect of this statute was to make it effectively impossible for people to discharge credit card debts. So while Bethlehem Steel can escape pension obligations through bankruptcy and Enron can escape power obligations through bankruptcy, you basically cannot escape credit card obligations through bankruptcy. You will carry these obligations forever. Now, this idea was first proposed during the administration of President Bill Clinton. He was originally in favor of this idea. But then his wife read an op-ed in the New York Times by Professor Elizabeth Warren, and she started referring to, quote, that awful bill. That's a small b in that statement. And she is credited by Professor Warren with single-handedly keeping the bill from becoming law, to her great credit, so to speak. But this statute, like Jason and Friday the 13th, would not go away. So in 2001, it returned. And by now, First Lady Clinton was Senator Clinton. And by now, she had received more than $140,000 in contributions from financial services companies. So what did she do now? Well, in 2001, she voted for that awful bill twice. Now, why is it she would flip on this bill? Well, of course, she said it was not the money. Here she is at a bloggers conference about 2 years ago.
I don't think, based on my 35 years of fighting for what I believe in, anybody seriously believes I'm going to be influenced by a lobbyist or a particular interest group.
Now, the bloggers there did not believe her credit claim. But I think the bloggers are wrong. I absolutely believe her, and I think you should believe her too. You don't get to be Hillary Clinton by being pushed around by these kinds of considerations. But put that view of reality aside here. Focus on a perception. What do others think? when they hear this story? What do they hear in any discussion you want to have about why Hillary Clinton did what she did after they hear $140,000? Will they trust that she gave the right answer for the right reason? Will they even engage in the conversation about why she did what she did? Or will they believe, as 88% of the people in my district in California believe, that money buys results in Congress, and this is just another example of that dynamic? I'm not sure if you saw this study just recently released by the University of Kansas discussing the return on investment for spending money on lobbyists. This was the Tax Repatriation Act, or the American Jobs Creation Act, that they studied. They concluded that the return on lobbyist expenditures was something like 22,000%. Now, those are good numbers if you can get them, but they don't obviously always turn out that way. But this study points to an important economy we need to think about, an economy that focuses on the return to lobbyist investment. Of course, not all such investment produces that kind of return, but many produce substantial return. And as conservatives have been talking about forever, what we need to think about is whether the return from investments on lobbyists in Washington exceeds the return on investments in innovation, whether it makes more sense to spend money on lobbyists than to invent the next great mousetrap. Because if it is this dynamic, then they will invest their money here. And of course, that's in fact exactly what they're doing now. Now, there's a perception around here that there's nothing new in this, but I think we need to accept a reality here that there is absolutely a fundamental change in the way this economy of influence is working. Two sources to that change: a new demand and a new supply. A new demand for money that's been produced by the explosion in cost to run political campaigns, professional political campaigns. And second, a new supply of money, a rise of efficient suppliers of money to these people who demand it to run these extremely expensive campaigns. Now, this story is told by many, but I think none more convincingly than in Robert Kaiser's new book, So Damn Much Money, focusing on these efficient suppliers, lobbying or lobbyists, who don't, of course, directly provide this money, but indirectly facilitate this feeding of this dependency that members in Congress have on cash. Now, not cash to feather their own nests. This is not the old kind of corruption that we've been seeing since Hamilton got the debts of the United States paid and just after the Congress first sat. I agree with Dennis Thompson that most informed observers believe that the legislator's integrity is greater now than at any point in the past. Instead, this is money to secure a certain kind of tenure. Not a tenure at a great place like this, but a tenure here, tenure in Washington. It is a kind of corruption, but it's not evil corruption. We could call it a kind of good souls corruption. Legal acts, ethical acts that corrupt because it destroys the faith in the institution that these members serve. It is destroyed because of this dependency. A dependency. Now think about this dynamic, because the framers of our Constitution were focused explicitly on this. Here's Jefferson writing in Notes on Virginia. This dependency begets subservience and venality, suffocates the germs of virtue, and prepares fit tools for the designs of ambition. And these designs here are clear. It is what that paper described. Direct the policy that the clients want, hopefully at a return of 22,000%. It's a policy arbitrage, that charge that is at the middle of this economy of influence. And I believe this, in fact, has changed.